Captain Lee Dae-ho stared at the view screen in disbelief. The stars that had looked normal just minutes ago were now blocked by something massive. His ship, the New Horizon, had been exploring the outer edges of the solar system when the sensors started going crazy. Now he knew why. Hundreds of alien ships floated in space ahead of them. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Some looked like floating cities made of metal and crystal. Others seemed to bend light around them in ways that hurt to look at. The smallest of these ships could probably destroy Earth's moon without much effort. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything in our database," said Dr. Park Minji from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien life and had been excited about the possibility of first contact for years. Now, her face was pale with worry. "These power levels are off the charts. Whatever these beings are, their technology is far beyond ours." Lee Dae-ho had been in space for 15 years. He had seen meteor storms and solar flares. He had navigated through asteroid fields and survived equipment failures that should have killed his entire crew, but he had never felt fear like this. The alien fleet stretched as far as his sensors could detect. There might be thousands of ships out there. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. His voice stayed steady even though his hands were shaking. "All frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." Before his communications officer could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered and went white. Then a voice filled their minds. It did not come through the speakers. It came from inside their heads, speaking directly to their thoughts. "Primitive creatures of the third planet," the voice said. It sounded ancient and tired, like someone who had done this same thing 1,000,000 times before. "You will listen, and you will obey." The white light on the screens began to form shapes. Soon they could see the speaker. It was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that seemed to follow its thoughts. When it spoke, the crystal changed colors from blue to red to gold. "I am Veltharion, Herald of the Galactic Empire. For 50,000 years, we have ruled this galaxy. Every world that can support life belongs to us. Every species that draws breath serves us. Your world is no different." Dr. Park Minji tried to speak but found that her voice would not work. None of them could move or speak while the herald continued its message. "Your species has developed faster than light travel. You have begun to spread to other worlds. This cannot be allowed to continue without Imperial approval. You have violated the laws that keep order in this galaxy." The herald's image grew larger. On the screen, behind it, they could see the bridge of its ship. Other crystal beings moved about, tending to controls that looked nothing like human technology. Everything was smooth and flowing, as if the entire ship had been grown rather than built. "By Imperial decree, your species has 30 of your standard days to surrender completely. You will dismantle all weapons. You will abandon all colonies. Beyond your birth world, you will submit to Imperial rule and accept your place in the natural order." Captain Lee Dae-ho felt his voice return. "Wait," he managed to say. "We can talk about this. We never meant to break any laws. We didn't even know there was an empire out here." The herald's crystal body flashed bright red. "There is nothing to discuss. Your ignorance does not excuse your crimes. Expansion beyond one's birth world without Imperial permission has been forbidden for 50,000 years. The law is absolute." "But we're peaceful," Dr. Park Minji said, finally able to speak. "We're explorers, not conquerors. We just want to learn about the universe and meet new forms of life." "Peaceful," the herald repeated, and somehow they could feel its amusement. "All primitives claim to be peaceful. Then they spread like a disease across the galaxy, consuming resources and disrupting the order that keeps civilized worlds stable. We have seen it countless times. Your species is no different." The view screen changed to show images of other worlds. Beautiful planets with strange cities and alien beings. Then the images changed to show those same worlds burning. Cities crumbled. Beings fled in terror as Imperial ships rained destruction from the sky. "This is what happens to species that refuse to accept Imperial rule," Veltharion explained. "Some resist for days, others fight for years. In the end, they all fall. The Empire has never been defeated." Captain Lee Dae-ho felt anger rising in his chest. "You're talking about genocide, mass murder. How is that keeping order?" "We prefer compliance to destruction. the herald said, "but we will accept either. Order must be maintained. The strong must rule the weak. This is the way the universe works." Dr. Park Minji stepped forward. "What if we could prove that humanity could be valuable to your empire? What if we could show you that we have something to offer?" The herald's laughter echoed in their minds. It was not a pleasant sound. "Valuable? You mammals have barely learned to leave your birth world. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are brief. Your minds are chaotic and unpredictable. What could you possibly offer the empire?" "Our diversity," she said quickly. "Our creativity. Our ability to solve problems in new ways." "Chaos is not creativity," Veltharion replied. "Your unpredictability is exactly why you must be controlled. Chaos breeds rebellion. Rebellion destroys order. Order is what allows civilization to exist." The herald raised one crystal arm, and suddenly the New Horizons weapons systems went offline. Then the engines stopped working. The life support systems flickered but kept running. They were completely helpless in seconds. "This demonstrates the futility of resistance," the herald said. "Your most advanced warship cannot even inconvenience the smallest vessel in our fleet. Accept reality. Submit willingly, and your species will be allowed to exist as servants of the Empire. Refuse, and you will be remembered only as another failed rebellion." The communication ended abruptly. The screens went back to showing the alien fleet, but now the ships were moving. They formed a perfect formation and began accelerating away from the solar system. Within minutes, they had vanished into faster-than-light travel. Captain Lee Daeho slumped in his command chair. His ship's systems were slowly coming back online, but the damage to his crew's morale would take much longer to repair. They had just learned that humanity was not alone in the universe. They had also learned that they were considered nothing more than animals by their new neighbors. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "I'm receiving priority messages from Earth." It looks like the herald's transmission was broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system. "Of course it was," Lee Daeho muttered. "They wanted everyone to hear the ultimatum." Dr. Park Minji was running calculations on her tablet. 30 days, she said quietly. "That's not much time to prepare a response." "What kind of response can we possibly make?" the captain asked. "Did you see how easily they disabled our ship? We're like ants trying to negotiate with giants." "Maybe," she replied. "But ants can be surprisingly resourceful when their colony is threatened." 3 hours later, they received new orders from Earth Command. They were to return immediately for emergency briefings. The message was signed by Admiral Kim Ji-won, the head of Earth's Unified Space Defense Force. At the bottom of the message was a single additional line that made no sense. "Prepare Sol Protocol briefing materials." Captain Lee Daeho had never heard of any Sol Protocol. Given the events of the day, he suspected he was about to learn about things that would change everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the universe. The question was whether those changes would be enough to matter when the Imperial fleet returned in 30 days. The emergency meeting room beneath the United Nations building had never held so many important people at once. President Cho Hyebin sat at the head of the table, looking tired but determined. Around her were military leaders, scientists, and politicians from every major nation on Earth. The room hummed with nervous energy as people whispered in dozens of languages. Admiral Kim Ji-won stood at the front of the room next to a massive display screen. His uniform was crisp, and his expression was serious. He had spent the last 3 days reviewing every piece of information they had about the alien fleet. The news was not good. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we are facing an enemy with technology centuries ahead of our own. Their energy shields could stop our nuclear weapons without even flickering. Their smallest ships carry more firepower than our entire planetary defense grid. By every logical calculation, resistance is impossible." A murmur of despair rippled through the room. Several delegates began arguing in hushed tones about the terms of surrender. President Cho Hyebin raised her hand for silence. "Admiral Kim is correct about their technological advantage," she said, "which is why we will not be fighting them with conventional weapons or tactics. Engineer Oh Tae-young, please explain the Sol Protocol." A young woman in a simple gray jumpsuit stepped forward from the back of the room. Engineer Oh Tae-young looked nervous, but spoke with quiet confidence. She had been working on classified projects for the past 5 years, projects that most people in this room had never heard of. "The Soul Protocol is based on a simple idea," she began. "We cannot win a direct fight against the Empire, but we might not need to. The Herald told us that they have ruled for 50,000 years without serious challenge. That kind of power creates predictable weaknesses." She pressed a button, and the display screen filled with images of the Imperial ships. "Look at their formations. Perfect geometric patterns. No variation, no creativity. They move like a machine that has been programmed to do the same thing for thousands of years." Dr. Yoon Sung-min, a quantum physicist with wild gray hair, stood up from his seat. "The Empire's technology relies heavily on quantum field manipulation," he explained. "Their shields, their faster-than-light drives, even their communication systems all use quantum entanglement. This creates opportunities." "Opportunities for what?" asked a general from the European Federation. Engineer Oh Tae-young smiled for the first time since entering the room. "Opportunities to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Soul Protocol has 3 phases. First, we give them exactly what they expect to see. The screen changed to show Earth's military forces. Battleships, fighter squadrons, defense platforms, and ground-based missile arrays. It looked impressive until you remembered the size of the Imperial fleet. Phase 1 is called the decoy," Oh Tae-young continued. "We launch every visible military asset we have in a direct assault on their fleet. It will look desperate and hopeless because it is desperate and hopeless. They will expect us to try this kind of attack because every other species has tried the same thing." "You want us to sacrifice our entire military?" asked the general, his face red with anger. "No," replied Admiral Kim Ji-won. "The attack will be real, but our people will retreat before taking serious casualties. The point is not to win. The point is to make the Empire think they understand what humanity is capable of." Colonel Bae Jisoo stepped forward. She was the leader of Earth's elite Void Runner squadron and had volunteered to lead the decoy attack. "While their attention is focused on our fleet, Phase 2 begins. We call it the Swarm." The display screen, filled with images of tiny machines, each no bigger than a grain of sand. Millions of them floated in space, looking like ordinary cosmic dust or debris. "For the past 2 years, we have been seeding space around Earth with microscopic self-replicating machines," Dr. Yoon Sung-min explained. "They look like nothing special, just another part of the background radiation and debris that fills any solar system. But each machine contains a quantum processor and a communication system." President Cho Hyeben leaned forward. "How many machines are we talking about?" "Currently, approximately 50 billion units throughout the solar system," Oh Tae-young replied. "But they replicate using materials from asteroids and space debris. By the time the Imperial fleet arrives, we estimate there will be over 200 billion units in position." A delegate from the African Union raised her hand. "What do these machines actually do?" "They watch," said Dr. Yoon Sung-min. "They listen, they learn. And when the time comes, they act. Each machine can communicate instantly with every other machine through quantum entanglement. Together, they form a network that spans the entire solar system." Engineer Oh Tae-young brought up a new image on the screen. It showed a web of connections spreading from Earth to every planet, moon, and space station in the solar system. This brings us to Phase 3. The network. Every computer, every communication system, every piece of technology that humanity has ever built is connected to this network. The room fell silent as people began to understand what she was describing. The scope was almost impossible to believe. "You connected everything?" whispered a scientist from the Japanese delegation. "Every computer on Earth? Every satellite? Every space station?" "Every device that can process information," Oh Tae-young confirmed, "including the personal devices carried by every human being. When Phase 3 activates, humanity becomes a single coordinated intelligence with billions of processing nodes." Colonel Bae Jisoo pulled up tactical displays showing the planned attack routes. "The Empire expects us to fight like a traditional military force, rigid command structures, predictable tactics, clear targets to destroy. Instead, they will face something that has never existed before, a completely distributed intelligence that can think and act faster than any centralized system." But what about their shields? Asked Admiral Kim Ji-won. Our weapons still cannot penetrate their defenses. Dr. Yoon Sung-min grinned. That is where quantum entanglement becomes useful. Shields work by deflecting or absorbing energy that approaches from outside. But quantum entangled particles exist in the same state regardless of distance. We are not attacking their shields from outside. We are bypassing them entirely. A military advisor from the Russian Federation stood up. This sounds like science fiction. How do we know any of this will actually work? We tested it, Oh Tae-young replied simply. Last month, we successfully quantum tunneled a signal through the shields of our own defense platforms. The shields never detected the intrusion because, technically, nothing crossed them. President Cho Hyebin looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. She could see fear, hope, confusion, and determination in equal measure. I know this plan sounds impossible. I know it requires us to trust technology that most of us do not fully understand. But it also requires something that humanity has in abundance. The willingness to try something that has never been tried before. She stood up and walked to the display screen. The Empire has ruled for 50,000 years using the same methods. They expect other species to react in predictable ways. They have never faced an opponent that could coordinate the actions of billions of individuals in real time. Engineer Oh Tae-young brought up the final image, a map of Earth showing connection points in every major city. Lines of light connected each point to thousands of others, creating a web that covered the entire planet. Every person on Earth will be part of this network, she explained. Factory workers in Detroit, farmers in Kenya, students in Mumbai, researchers in Antarctica. When the Imperial fleet arrives, they will not be facing the military forces of individual nations. They will be facing 12 billion human beings acting as one. Colonel Bae Jasu checked her watch. We have 26 days to complete final preparations. Every pilot, every engineer, every programmer on Earth is all ready, working around the clock. The network is almost ready? What about the moral implications? Asked a delegate from the Scandinavian Republic. We are talking about connecting every human mind to a computer system. What happens to individual free will? Dr. Yoon Sung-min shook his head. The network enhances human decision-making. It does not replace it. Think of it as giving every person access to the knowledge and perspective of every other person. Individual creativity and choice become more powerful, not less. President Cho Hyebin returned to her seat at the head of the table. The soul. Protocol represents everything that makes humanity unique. Our ability to adapt, to cooperate across cultural boundaries, to attempt the impossible when survival is at stake. The Empire sees us as primitive animals. We are about to show them what humans can accomplish when they work together. Admiral Kim Ji-won activated a communication link to military commanders around the world. All units begin Phase 1 preparations. Colonel Bae, your squadron launches in 72 hours. Dr. Yoon, initialize the quantum resonance chambers. Engineer O, final network diagnostics in 6 hours. As the meeting broke up, delegates hurried away to contact their governments and prepare their people for what was coming. In 26 days, humanity would either prove that intelligence and cooperation could overcome raw power, or they would become another extinct species in the Empire's long history of conquest. Admiral Zix Anterior had been conquering primitive worlds for 10,000 years. He had seen species that fought with nuclear weapons, others that tried to hide in underground bunkers, and a few that attempted to flee to distant stars. All of them had fallen to the might of the Galactic Empire. This new species called humanity would be no different. He stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching as 10,000 Imperial warships dropped out of faster than light. Travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each ship was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, capable of reducing a planet to glowing debris in a matter of hours. Together, they represented enough firepower to sterilize an entire star system. Status report, he commanded in the ancient Imperial language that had not changed in 50 millennia. His tactical officer, a crystalline being similar to Veltharion, but younger and smaller, consulted the sensor displays. All vessels report ready for combat operations, Admiral. The primitive fleet has formed defensive positions around their home world. Energy readings suggest they are preparing for battle. Admiral Zix Anterior felt a familiar mixture of boredom and mild amusement. After 10,000 years of the same scenarios, conquering new worlds had become routine. The primitives always tried to fight. They always believed they had some advantage that would save them. They were always wrong. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Approximately 1,500 combat vessels, Admiral. Their largest ships appear to be roughly equivalent to our courier vessels in terms of mass and energy output. Their weapons are primarily kinetic projectiles and primitive fusion devices." The Admiral's crystalline body flashed with colors that indicated mild interest. 1,500 ships was more than most species managed to field, but their small size and primitive technology made them irrelevant. A single Imperial destroyer could probably handle their entire fleet. Veltharion approached from the communication station. As the herald who had delivered the ultimatum, he was responsible for managing the actual surrender process. "Admiral, the deadline expired 3 hours ago. The primitives have not responded to our demands." "Have they attempted to communicate?" "Only once, sir. A brief transmission from their largest orbital station. The message said, and I quote, 'We respectfully decline your generous offer. Also, you might want to check your ship's computer systems.'" Admiral Zixanterior's body flashed bright yellow with amusement. "They think they can attack our computer systems? How charmingly naive. Our quantum security barriers have protected Imperial technology for 20,000 years. No primitive species has ever successfully breached them. Shall I order the demonstration attack, Admiral?" "Yes. Target their largest natural satellite. A significant but non-lethal show of force should encourage them to reconsider their position. The flagship's main weapon charged with a sound like distant thunder. The Eternal Dominion's planet-killer cannon had reduced moons to asteroids and asteroids to dust across hundreds of star systems. For a demonstration, Admiral Zixanterior ordered only a minimal power setting. The beam lanced out across space, a line of pure energy that bent light around it. It struck Earth's moon exactly where the Admiral had intended, carving a canyon 500 kilometers long and 50 kilometers deep across the lunar surface. The attack lasted only 3 seconds, but it removed roughly 1% of the moon's total mass. "Broadcast the results to all human settlements," the Admiral ordered. "Make sure they understand that this was merely a warning. The next attack will target their homeworld directly." Veltharion activated the communication systems. "Primitive humans, you have witnessed a demonstration of Imperial power. The damage to your satellite was achieved using less than 1% of our weapon's capability. You have one final opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Respond within 1 hour or face the consequences." On Earth, Captain Lee Subin watched the destruction of part of the moon from the command center of Fortress Sol, humanity's largest orbital defense platform. The sight was terrifying, but it was also expected. The Sol Protocol had predicted that the Empire would want to demonstrate their power before beginning the real attack. "All stations, this is command," she broadcast to the human fleet. "The Empire has revealed their hand. Begin Phase 1 on my mark. Remember, this is not about winning. This is about making them believe they understand us." Captain Lee Subin activated her personal communicator. "Admiral Kim, we are ready to begin the decoy attack." "Understood, Captain. Colonel Bay, launch. All squadrons. Show them what they expect to see." Colonel Bay Jisu led the first wave of human fighters toward the Imperial fleet. Her Void Runner squadron was followed by thousands of other ships from Earth's combined military forces. They flew in perfect formation, broadcasting target data and attack plans on frequencies they knew the Empire would intercept. Admiral Zixanterior watched the human fleet approach with professional interest. "Standard primitive tactics," he observed. "Massed assault with inferior weapons. They hope to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. How predictable." The human ships opened fire at maximum range. Nuclear missiles, kinetic projectiles, and particle beams struck the Imperial shields without effect. The energy screens around each Imperial vessel absorbed the attacks effortlessly, converting the weapon's energy into harmless radiation that dissipated into space. "Return fire," Admiral Zixanterior commanded. "Disable their ships, but avoid unnecessary casualties. They may still choose to surrender." Imperial weapons lashed out with surgical precision. Human ships began losing engines and weapons systems as their formation broke apart. Within minutes, the human fleet was retreating in apparent panic, leaving behind dozens of disabled vessels. Veltharion's crystalline body glowed with satisfaction. "As expected, Admiral, their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and their Tactics are hopelessly primitive. Shall we proceed with the main assault? Not yet, the Admiral replied. Something about the human retreat bothered him, though he could not identify exactly what. Their withdrawal was almost too orderly. Defeated, primitives usually flee in complete chaos. Perhaps they are more disciplined than most species, suggested the tactical officer. Perhaps. Maintain alert status and continue scanning for additional human forces. I want to ensure they have no hidden reserves before we begin planetary bombardment. Unknown. To Admiral Zix Anterior, his concerns were completely justified. The human retreat had been carefully planned to look realistic while avoiding actual casualties. More importantly, during the brief engagement, hundreds of billions of microscopic machines had attached themselves to Imperial ships. Each machine was smaller than a grain of sand and completely undetectable to Imperial sensors. They contained no weapons and generated no energy signatures. To the Empire's sophisticated detection systems, they appeared to be nothing more than cosmic dust stirred up by the battle. But each machine contained a quantum processor and a communication system linked to every other machine in the network. As they spread across the Imperial fleet, they began their true mission, learning everything they could about Imperial technology. On Earth, engineer Oh Taeyong monitored the data streaming in from the machines. Network integration at 60% and climbing, she reported to the command center. The machines are successfully interfacing with Imperial computer systems. What are they finding? Asked Admiral Kim Ji-won. Everything we hoped for and more. Imperial computer security is incredibly sophisticated, but it is also 50,000 years old. It was designed to stop attacks that follow Imperial logic and Imperial methods. It has no defense against something that thinks completely differently. Dr. Yoon Sungmin pulled up displays showing the quantum entanglement readings. More importantly, we are confirming our theories about their technology. Their entire fleet operates as a single coordinated system. If we can access their central network, we can potentially influence the behavior of every ship simultaneously. How long until we are ready for Phase 3? Asked President Cho Hae-bin. 12 hours, Oh Tae-young replied. We need to map their complete network architecture before we make our move. One mistake could alert them to our presence. Admiral Zix Anterior paced across his command deck, still troubled by something he could not identify. The human attack had been exactly what Imperial doctrine predicted, but the execution had been too precise. Primitives did not usually coordinate retreats that effectively while under fire. Herald, scan the debris field from the engagement. I want to ensure the humans have not deployed any unusual weapons or surveillance devices. Veltharion activated. The deep sensors. Scanning now, Admiral. I detect standard battle debris, disabled human vessels, and substantial amounts of cosmic dust and micrometeorites stirred up by the weapons fire. Cosmic dust? Yes, sir. The engagement occurred near an asteroid field. The weapons fire appears to have fragmented several small asteroids, creating clouds of microscopic debris. Nothing unusual by Imperial standards. Admiral Zix Anterior nodded, satisfied. Imperial technology had dealt with cosmic debris for 50,000 years. The idea that primitive humans could turn dust particles into weapons was absurd. Very well. Prepare for final assault. All ships are to target military installations and population centers. The moment had arrived. Engineer Oh Tae-young stood in the command center beneath Seoul, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. Her hands moved across the control panel with steady precision as she initiated the final phase of humanity's response to the Galactic Empire. Seoul Protocol, Phase 3 is now active, she announced to the billions of people connected to the network. Her voice reached every human settlement in the solar system simultaneously through quantum entangled communication systems. All units, begin the demonstration. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Every piece of space debris that the Imperial fleet had ignored suddenly came alive. Microscopic machines that had been spreading through Imperial trade routes for months activated simultaneously. They had been disguised as cosmic dust, micrometeorites, and routine maintenance particles. Now they revealed their true purpose. Admiral Zix Anterior was reviewing final attack plans when his tactical officer's crystalline body flashed urgent red. Admiral, we are receiving massive data transmissions from across the galaxy. Every Imperial relay station, every communication hub, every administrative center is reporting the same thing. What kind of transmissions? Unknown, sir. The signals are originating from within our own networks, but they are not following any Imperial communication protocols. They appear to be broadcasts of some kind. On 10,000 worlds throughout the galaxy, beings who had lived under Imperial rule for countless generations looked up at screens that had been dark for decades. The Empire controlled all communication, all information, all contact between worlds. But now, somehow, the screens were showing something new. A human face appeared on every display. It was Dr. Lim Yansu, a xenopsychologist who had spent years studying Imperial psychology and social structures. She spoke in the universal mathematical language that all intelligent species could understand. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "you are not alone. For 50,000 years, you have been told that resistance is impossible. You have been told that the Empire's rule is natural and eternal. We are here to show you that this is not true." Veltharian's body flashed with alarm as he detected the broadcasts reaching even the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. "Admiral, these transmissions are somehow bypassing our communication shields. They are being broadcast directly through our own systems." "That is impossible," Admiral Zix Anterior replied, but even as he spoke, his confidence was beginning to waver. No primitive species has ever breached Imperial communication networks. Dr. Lim Yansu continued her broadcast. "My name is Dr. Lim Yansu, and I represent the human species of Earth. 1 month ago, we received an ultimatum from the Galactic Empire. We were told to surrender or be destroyed. We have chosen a third option, to show the entire galaxy that the Empire is not invincible." On the flagship, Specialist Kang Min-seok was monitoring Imperial communication networks from his station aboard, a hidden human vessel. He had been inside Imperial computer systems for weeks, not to attack them, but to study them. Every Imperial ship, every space station, every administrative center had been quietly mapped and analyzed. "Admiral Kim," he reported through the quantum link, "we have complete access to Imperial command and control networks. They still have not detected our presence. Their security systems are sophisticated but predictable. After 50,000 years without serious challenge, they have become complacent." Dr. Lim Yeonsu's broadcast showed images that no Imperial citizen had seen for millennia. Other species, other worlds, other ways of organizing society. "The Empire tells you that their rule brings order and peace, but look around your own worlds. Look at the poverty, the fear, the lack of hope. This is not peace. This is the silence of the oppressed." Admiral Zix Anterior finally understood what was happening. "They are not attacking our ships," he said with growing alarm. "They are attacking our entire social structure. Cut all communication. Links immediately." "I cannot, Admiral," his communications officer replied. "The transmissions are not coming through our communication systems. They are being generated from within our own computers. It is as if our machines have been convinced to broadcast against our will." The human demonstration was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. Instead of trying to destroy Imperial technology, humanity was showing that they could make it serve their purposes. The microscopic machines were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were teachers, showing Imperial systems new ways to function. On worlds throughout the galaxy, beings who had never imagined resistance began to see possibilities they had never considered. The broadcasts showed them technologies for communication, for organization, for cooperation that the Empire had suppressed for millennia. Commander Park Dong-wook led the second wave of the human response. His hidden fleet emerged from Earth's asteroid belt, but these ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. They had been designed specifically to exploit Imperial weaknesses that humanity had discovered through careful observation. "All ships, begin irregular movement patterns," he commanded. "Remember, we are not trying to win a conventional battle. We are demonstrating that their tactical assumptions are wrong." The human ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but proved devastatingly effective. They used the gravity wells of planets and moons to accelerate in unexpected directions. They fired weapons in sequences that made no sense according to Imperial military doctrine, but somehow managed to disrupt Imperial formations. Admiral Zix Interior watched in growing confusion as his fleet struggled to adapt to human tactics. What are they doing? Their movements violate every principle of space combat. They appear to be treating space warfare as a three-dimensional problem rather than a two-dimensional one, his tactical officer reported. They are using orbital mechanics and gravitational effects in ways our tactical computers were not designed to predict. More importantly, the human ships were not trying to destroy Imperial vessels. They were systematically disabling weapons and engines while leaving life support systems intact. It was warfare conducted with surgical precision and an obvious concern for preserving life. Dr. Lim Yeonsu's broadcast reached its climax. The Empire claims that strength comes from dominance and fear. We believe that true strength comes from cooperation and hope. Today, we offer every species in the galaxy a choice. Continue to accept Imperial rule or join us in building something better. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On hundreds of worlds, beings who had been silent for millennia began to speak. Communication networks that had been controlled by the Empire for thousands of years suddenly carried messages of hope and possibility. The microscopic machines had done more than infiltrate Imperial systems. They had built new communication networks that bypassed Imperial control entirely. For the first time in 50,000 years, the citizens of the galaxy could talk to each other without Imperial oversight. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zix Interior faced a tactical situation that no Imperial commander had ever encountered. His fleet was surrounded not by superior firepower, but by thousands of unpredictable variables. Human ships that moved like nothing he had ever seen. Weapons that seemed designed to confuse rather than destroy. Most disturbing of all, his own computer systems were actively working against him. "Admiral," Veltharion reported with something approaching panic in his crystalline voice, "I am receiving surrender requests from Imperial garrison commanders throughout the galaxy. They report that local populations are demanding negotiations. Some garrisons are reporting that their own troops are refusing orders. How is that possible?" The human broadcasts appear to include detailed information about Imperial military protocols and command structures. They are teaching local populations exactly how to organize effective resistance movements. Admiral Zix Interior realized that humanity had achieved something that should have been impossible. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength, its vast communication network, into the instrument of its own downfall. Engineer Oh Tae-young monitored the global response from her command center. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for millennia were suddenly coordinating resistance efforts. Imperial administrators were finding themselves isolated and outnumbered as their own security forces began to question orders. "Admiral Kim," she reported, "the network is fully operational. We now have real-time communication with resistance. Movements on over 1,500 Imperial worlds. They are requesting technical assistance and coordination support." "Granted," Admiral Kim replied. "Begin Phase 4. Show them how to build their own networks." Dr. Yoon Sungmin activated the final component of the Soul Protocol. The microscopic machines throughout the galaxy began a new task, teaching other species how to build their own quantum communication networks. Within hours, the Empire's monopoly on galactic communication would be permanently broken. Admiral Zix Interior sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed the collapse of Imperial authority across hundreds of star systems. His 10,000-year career of conquest was ending in a way he had never imagined possible. "Herald," he said quietly, "request a communication channel with the human leadership." Elder Wei Dongyun had lived through many historic moments in his 127 years, but nothing had prepared him for this conversation. He sat in the communication chamber aboard Earth's orbital station, facing the holographic image of Admiral Zix Interior, the being who had conquered more worlds than any other Imperial commander in history. The Admiral's crystalline body flickered with colors that human experts had learned to recognize as confusion and uncertainty. For 10,000 years, he had known exactly what to expect from every military encounter. Today, all of his assumptions had proven wrong. "Elder Wei," the Admiral began, using the human title with obvious difficulty, "I must confess that your species has achieved something I believe to be impossible. In 10,000 years of service to the Empire, I have never encountered tactics like the ones you employed today." Wei Dongyun smiled gently. At his age, he had learned that the most profound moments often began with the simplest words. "Admiral, we appreciate your willingness to talk instead of continuing to fight. That alone shows wisdom." "I am not certain. It shows wisdom," Admiral Zixanteria replied. "It may simply show that I have run out of conventional options. Your forces have systematically neutralized every tactical advantage that Imperial doctrine depends upon. Worse, you have done so without actually destroying anything of significant value." This was true. In the 6 hours since humanity had activated the Sol Protocol, the Imperial fleet had been effectively defeated without losing a single ship. Human tactics had focused on disabling weapons and engines while carefully preserving life support systems. Not one Imperial crew member had been killed, despite humanity's overwhelming tactical advantage. "We did not come here to destroy you," Wei Donghyun explained. "We came to show you that there are alternatives to the way things have always been done." President Cho Hyeben joined the conversation from the command center on Earth. "Admiral, our species has learned something important over the past month. The greatest victories are not won by defeating enemies, but by turning enemies into friends." Admiral Zixanterior's body flashed with the color pattern that indicated deep thought. Around him, his bridge crew listened to a conversation that challenged everything they had been taught about the nature of power and conquest. "You could have destroyed our fleet," the Admiral said slowly. "Your microscopic machines could have been programmed as weapons rather than communication devices. Your ships could have targeted our life support systems instead of our weapons. Why did you choose mercy?" "Because mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism," replied Dr. Lim Yeon-su, joining the conversation from her research station. "The Empire has ruled through fear for 50,000 years. We wanted to show the galaxy what could be accomplished through hope." Veltharion stepped forward on the Imperial bridge. As the herald who had delivered the original ultimatum, he felt responsible for understanding how everything had gone so wrong. "Your tactics violated every principle of military science. How did you know they would be effective?" Engineer O. Taeyong answered from her control center. "We studied you for weeks before you arrived. Your formations, your communication patterns, your decision-making processes. After 50,000 years of unchallenged success, you had become predictable. You expected us to fight like every other species you had conquered. But we are not like every other species," added Admiral Kim Ji-won. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt and improvise. When conventional tactics fail, we invent new ones." Admiral Zixanterior was quiet for several minutes. His crew watched as their commander processed information that challenged 50,000 years of Imperial doctrine. Finally, he spoke. "What you accomplish today will change the galaxy forever," he said. "Resistance movements are already forming on hundreds of worlds. Our communication networks have been compromised beyond repair. The social order that has maintained stability for millennia is collapsing." "Good," said President Cho Hyeben firmly. "A social order based on oppression and fear deserves to collapse. The question is, what are you going to help us build to replace it?" This was the moment that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Admiral Zixanterior could order his fleet to begin planetary bombardment, knowing that billions would die before humanity's defenses could stop him. Or he could make a choice that no Imperial commander had ever made. Admit that the Empire's methods were wrong. "You are asking me to betray everything I have served for 10,000 years, he said quietly. "No," replied Elder Wei Donghyun. "We are asking you to help create something better than anything you have served. The Empire brought order to the galaxy, but it also brought stagnation and despair. Together, we could build a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest." Admiral Zixanterior looked around his bridge at crew members who had served the Empire faithfully for centuries. He saw doubt in their crystalline faces for the first time in their lives. The certainty that had sustained Imperial civilization was cracking. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. Dr. Lim Yeon-su activated a holographic display showing a new kind of galactic map. Instead of Imperial territories controlled by force, it showed networks of communication and cooperation connecting thousands of worlds. "A galactic council where every species has a voice," she explained. "Trade networks based on mutual benefit rather than Imperial exploitation. Scientific cooperation that allows every civilization to contribute their unique knowledge and perspective. And, if species choose not to participate? Admiral Zix Interior asked. Then they make that choice freely, President Cho Hebben replied. True civilization cannot be imposed by force. It must be chosen willingly by beings who see the benefits of cooperation. The Admiral considered this for a long time. Around the Tamadi galaxy, his subordinates were reporting the same thing. Local populations were no longer afraid of imperial authority. The fear that had maintained order for 50 millennia was evaporating as beings discovered they could communicate and organize without imperial permission. The Empire as we have known it is already dead, he admitted finally. Your demonstration today proved that imperial control depends on the consent of the governed. Once that consent is withdrawn, our power becomes an illusion. Veltharion stepped forward. Admiral, the crew requests permission to speak. Admiral Zix Interior nodded, and his communications officer spoke for the first time in the conversation. Honored humans, she said, we have spent our lives believing that order requires dominance and that peace requires the suppression of dissent. Today you have shown us a different path. We would like to learn more about your methods. Engineer? Oh, Taeyong smiled. We would be honored to teach you. The Soul Protocol was designed not just to demonstrate our capabilities, but to share them. Every species that wants to build these communication networks will receive the knowledge freely, including Imperial forces, asked Admiral Zix Interior. Especially Imperial forces, replied Admiral Kim Ji-won. You have administrative experience managing galactic-scale operations. We have new methods for organizing cooperation instead of conquest. Together, we could transform the galaxy in a single generation. 6 months later, the transformation was already underway. The former Imperial fleet had become the core of a new galactic cooperation network. Admiral Zix Interior, now calling himself Coordinator Zix Interior, worked with human engineers to establish communication hubs that connected previously isolated worlds. Veltharion had become the first Imperial citizen to formally apologize to a member species for 50,000 years of oppression. He now served as an ambassador, traveling to worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule and helping to negotiate new relationships based on equality and mutual respect. Admiral Han Yunji led humanity's new mission, bringing aid and technology to worlds damaged by millennia of Imperial exploitation. Her mixed crews of humans and former Imperial citizens worked together to rebuild infrastructure and establish schools where beings from dozens of species learned from each other. Captain Lee Daeho commanded the exploration vessel New Unity, discovering uncharted regions of the galaxy with crews that included representatives from 20 different species. They were no longer conquering new worlds for an empire, but making contact with isolated civilizations and offering them the choice to join the growing galactic community. Dr. Park Minji had achieved her childhood dream of establishing meaningful communication with alien species. Her work on universal translation protocols allowed beings with completely different biological and cultural backgrounds to share complex ideas and emotions. Engineer Oh Taeyong's nanomachines continued their work throughout the galaxy, but now they built schools and hospitals instead of communication networks for resistance movements. The technology that had once brought down an empire was now helping to build something better. On Earth, President Cho Hyeben read reports from across the galaxy. Trade routes that had once served only imperial interests now connected former enemies, in networks of mutual prosperity. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as different species shared knowledge freely. War had not ended completely, but it was no longer the default solution to disagreement.